Welcome to episode 92 of the Ceres podcast. I'm your host Stelios and the founder and director of the world of Ceres. In this episode, I talked to two great guys, Martin Robinson from Robinson's Fish and Chips in Billingham and Tom Doran from Fishermans Chippy in Mevagissey and Archies Fish and Chips in St Stephen, both in Cornwall. Both chaps are running great businesses. I've wanted to get them both on for some time to test out something. What's it like getting two great operators on a podcast that haven't met before, one from up north and one from down south? I personally think it was great, both really knowledgeable, and I'd love to have them on in the future. As we approach episode 100, you will notice some changes to the Ceres podcast. We have been listening to all the feedback from all the listeners, so we're trying to make it happen. And if you have any feedback, just let us know at stelios@worldofceres.com. It's always been my long-held belief that at every price level, customers get really passionate about great tasting food, expertly cooked, of course. And when seafood is fresh and picked by an expert like Jimmy Buchan and his team at Amity Fish Company, you're halfway to getting people going crazy over great scampi. Scampi is often overlooked. Why not wow and delight your guests today by ordering from Amity Fish Company? Jimmy's hands-on approach ensures nothing slips under the net. Amity's dedicated team are focused on values of quality, sustainability, traceability and provenance, ensuring only the best Scottish catch will reach homes and businesses. Amity Fish Company is also proud to be an approved Marine Stewardship Council supplier, keeping the chain of custody from sea to plate. Already supplying the offshore sector with MSC certified fish, Amity Fish Company is a great advocate of championing the responsible fishing scheme, which is an industry approved standard that vessels need to attain. Amity Fish Company provides an opportunity to seek and source your chosen seafood so that you have the confidence to promote the best Scottish seafood in your business. In buying into Amity, you are also buying into a wealth of experience. Let Amity take quality control like no other and guaranteed sustainability from shore to your door. Scampi doesn't have to be boring. Get in touch with Amity Fish today at amityfish.co.uk. Being the head honcho at the world of Ceres, I'm probably biased somewhat, but I do get pretty excited about the Ceres deep fryer cleaner. The reason is it was the first product I developed that wasn't a food product. The benefits of a regular fryer boil outs are endless. The fact is, cleaner pans give you better oil life, better food quality, better recovery. But one of the biggest positives is the fact that you are checking for your pan integrity a lot more often. With luck, you can find out what problems are coming well before they happen. It works on all frying ranges and all commercial fryers. Think of it like this: if the vessel is dirty, then how can you fry clean tasting food? Go one step further, how can you add new oil to a dirty fryer? Can you afford not to have a regular boil out routine? Order your Ceres deep fryer cleaner today at theworldofceres.com. Anyway, enough from me. I hope you enjoy episode 92 with Martin and Tom. Martin, Tom, welcome to the Ceres podcast.
Thank you.
Hi, Stelios.
Thanks for your time today. Bank holiday and all that. I know that you both wanted the opportunity to sort of have a few moments away from the kids. So, thanks for doing this podcast with us today.
You're welcome. It's a pleasure to be here.
How was the bank holiday weekend for you guys?
Yeah, busy. As expected. If you're quiet on a Good Friday, you need to be doing something else, don't you?
Well, I wanted to establish here that not all shops are busy on a Good Friday. It might seem alien to many. I noticed some animosity in the groups because I think not all shops are busy on a Good Friday. I think many are, but I find I can't put my finger on it. What do you put it down to that you were busy and let's say many others weren't? And I don't think it's as simple as you're good, they're shit. Like there must be like a geographical change that sort of occurs over that weekend. I don't know.
For me, historically, growing up with fish and chips, just family business, all our shops, for as long as I can remember, have always been busy on Good Friday. We've always been on residential sites or residential estates. So I would put that down to bank holiday weekend, people being off work, people being at home. and just being in the area, it's always been a given to me that we're going to be busy on Good Friday. So I've never had any other experience of it.
Well, we've got 2 shops and a mobile unit. The mobile unit we haven't got up and running yet. One of our shops is down on the south coast of Cornwall in a fishing village called Mevagissey. And Good Friday is normally huge down there. A large sort of contributing factor to that is that at that time of year around Easter, there's normally a lot of tourism down in South Cornwall. So, the shop is naturally pretty busy anyway, but we do see an increase on Good Friday. And we have had some huge days down there, some huge Good Fridays down there in the past. But this year it was a bit different because there's theoretically no tourism down there at the moment, although there's a few. It wasn't an absolutely huge day. It was certainly busier than a normal Friday, and the Fridays we've been having in lockdown, if you like. It was probably about twice as busy. So yeah, it was pretty good. And then our other shop, Archies, which is inland and not really frequented by tourists. It's a kind of a Cornish chippy for the Cornish, if you like. It was busy, but I think I said to you off air actually that we've reached a point in that shop where every Friday and Saturday it kind of can't get any busier than it already is. It's a very, very small shop. We've only got 3 pans, not really enough room to swing a cat. So yeah, I mean, it was a slightly above average Friday night, but it was, we're always running pretty much at capacity and what we can manage in there anyway. So yeah, that was our Good Friday. So probably not quite. Getting back to what you said about geographical location, I think that is I do think, having looked on the Facebook pages and the forums and stuff, a lot of the people who seem to be reporting of Good Friday being this absolute event do seem to be the shops further north, and I'm sure you might be able to correct me on that, but that did seem to be something I noticed.
I haven't put a lot of thought into it, and at the moment a lot of it is anecdotal, so I do think it would be nice to sort of maybe look at why that is. I think when I talked to on the day itself, a lot of people said to me before the day that historically they're quiet, so they take staff off. They let the staff have a night off. And I find that incredible that some shops just absolutely have a great time with it. And others just think, well, I'm going to be quiet. And I know where I'm from, it's not far from Coventry, Leicester. So quite industrial in some ways. And I know that traditionally they shut down for a few days too. And I do wonder if people just think, you know what, we're getting out of here. Let's go to the coast, whether it's the Lincolnshire coast or the Western Supermare, which a lot of people in Midlands go to. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know the answer, but I know there was many people that text me on the day saying, here we go. They're all busy and we're not. But it was a normal thing. It wasn't after the fact. It was before the fact. It could be, I don't know. It could be. And I've often said, like in the Midlands, especially, or even the central belt of the UK, which is East Midlands, West Midlands, sort of some parts of Wales. Maybe it's because a lot of fish and chip shops are mixed and they do kebabs and they do pizzas and they do pies. Has it become a bit to the consumer? Well, I don't identify with that as a fish and chip shop. I don't know. Could be that too,
Yeah, but I mean, I think I spoke to you about it yesterday or the day before. What I did enjoy was seeing the Facebook posts about, I did, Good Friday's really busy. I do 10 stone. Oh, well, I do 20 stone. I do 30 stone. I do 50 stone. And it just ends up turning into this like battle of how macho can I be? And with my vastly inflated reports of the amount of fish that I've dropped out for Good Friday. But it's all good. It's all good fun.
And you both text me at night after the shift saying that, essentially, like, look at everyone sort of like boosting their ego. And I don't mind. Look, I always have a bit of a laugh, and I'm happy-go-lucky, really. But I do sort of see that some people just relish in the opportunity, obviously, to say how busy they were, and I get that. And then that must make others that are quiet feel crap. But that's not a reason for anybody to not say anything. No. You can't always worry about what others think. But it is interesting because it's like, like you say, all those figures being blown out there. Someone puts on there, HMRC is going to love this. Yeah. And I was just thinking, oh my God. And you can tell that's just someone else on the other side of the coin that's thinking, yeah, like stuff them too, sort of thing. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. Like I said to Martin yesterday, I don't think it's true unless it's been posted on Facebook now. Seriously, whatever you say. If you told me you went to the gym, I don't believe it unless you put a photo of it on Facebook. And I think that's the world we live in now, that that everything's got to go on Facebook, and it's interesting. But One thing, talking about Facebook, I did quickly go on your Facebook pages earlier, guys, just to quickly refresh myself with, anything new that you might be doing. And I noticed that there was on both your pages, there was something missing, and that was battered chocolate. And is that on purpose? Yeah, Martin, have you avoided battered chocolate completely on purpose?
Yeah, we just don't.
What about you, Tom? Not into it, or?
I have a strict philosophy for all of our shops that I won't serve anything that I wouldn't want to eat myself. And battered chocolate definitely falls within that category of something that I'm never going to put into my mouth. So, that's why we don't do it.
As a batter sort of manufacturer, creator, or whatever, you'd probably think that I would be telling people to do something like that. And I don't really. And I think one of the things I see is that the biggest problem with it is if you want to do that, it's your prerogative, but have a separate fryer. Like, honestly, like when I saw the other day that, the last few weeks, people have been going through this craze of a buttered roll, and I'm just going to say a bread roll for those that want to call it something else,
or a chip butty,
whatever it may be. Fill it up with chips and then curry sauce or gravy, and then batter that. Yeah. And I'm just like honestly, my head is in my hands. I'm just thinking, and someone said like that, and again, I don't know who it was, but it's just a comment that they said, how much time does that take you? How much oil is that ruining? All for what? 2-3 quid. It's just like,
there was lots of shops in my area that did it, and they all went online, and it was like a big thing. So on your local community Facebook groups, I felt like we were probably the only shop that didn't take part. The staff were bugging us to have a go and try them. So we did it. Basically, we did 2 just so the girls could try them, the staff could try them, and they were awful. They were disgusting. You can imagine. I mean, you batter in a bun, so the amount of fat that it soaked up. So we did them, we cut them into 8s, and the first one, it tasted all right, but then 10-15 minutes later, you could just feel it on your stomach, like just the amount of grease in there. But we certainly didn't put them on the menu. We did it just to see what they were like, but yeah, they weren't good.
I don't know, like just because you have a vat of frying oil, it doesn't mean everything has to pass through it. Like, and I remember a few years ago, I went to one shop. They only had a 2-pan range. And I'm not sure how busy the shop was now, looking back. Everything went through that oil. They did bacon for the burgers. They dropped it in the oil. They wanted fried onions for the burgers. It went through the oil. Everything. The burgers went through the oil. And then he was like, I don't sell a lot of fish and chips, I was like... I can't see why. And I was obviously at the time I was probably a bit wet behind the ears and didn't want to upset anybody, which doesn't happen much these days. But it was just like everything went through that oil, and no filtration, no nothing. And I remember at the time his batter was coming out really like dark browny because of all that sugar that's going through it, and he just couldn't see the problem. And then a few months later, he texts me and he's like, "Oh, I've started doing donuts." And I was like, "Oh, did you get a donut fry?" Which was obviously a stupid question. And he goes, "No, I've been putting it through the same oil." And I was just like, God. So you've got the sugar and the vanilla coming out the donuts, and then you've got all the bacon and the shit that was there from before as well. So honestly, oil management is one of those things that I don't think people they don't take it seriously enough in our industry, if I'm honest. I just don't see it.
Yeah, I'm not sure. And I think there's obviously what is interesting to see is that everybody has different opinions on how oil management is best carried out. And you get shops that obviously, well, before you even start on all the different types of fats and frying mediums, you get some people who like to work the oil down the pans, and some people who like to fry in oil that's pretty used and mature. Some people who like to fry in really, really fresh oil, and there's nobody that's wrong or right, I don't think. The guy who's putting donuts in his pan is blatantly wrong, but there's there is no wrong or right way of doing it. It's interesting, hearing and seeing that there's so many different ideas about oil management. Personally, when it comes to chips, we like to fry our chips in really, really spanking fresh oil. We use high oleic sunflower oil, which we like, and we like to fry our chips in super fresh oil. We think they go crisper and cleaner and just and in our view, a nicer product. Whereas with the fish, to get that bit of colour and that bit of flavour, we like to, use oil that's a bit more established. But yeah, oil management is obviously crucial, like you said, however you do it.
I'm going to agree and disagree with you somewhat there, Tom, because I do think there is lots of right ways, but there's also lots of wrong ways. And I think, and I think for me, there's tried and tested things. I know that, I've always known that chips tend to clean oil if they're good quality. They can take out a bit of carbon and stuff like that. But I do agree with you where you say that that like clean oil for the chips and so on. I don't have an issue with that. But I think when you look at the likes of McDonald's and what they know about oil management, they've got the science down right, and they don't like anything in with their chip oils. No meats go in there. They don't even put hash browns in because the onion will change the flavour of the chip, let's say the fry. So I do think there's lots of right ways, but there's also lots of wrong ways. And I think where a few years ago I just wouldn't have ever said it, whereas now it's like, no, it's obvious. Like, it is obvious. I think as an industry, I think we can be quite relaxed, and I think we always say like, oh, well, we're not like McDonald's. We're better than that. We use better things or better food or better ingredients. And no, to some degree, there's no doubt we probably do use better ingredients, don't we? Like, but is it put together as consistently as what they do? And and they're very scientifically knowledgeable. Like to think that they boil out their pans once a week or once a day, and yet I get customers ring me up after trying the boil out, the pan clean, and saying, "Oh well, I've never done it for 9 years," and you wonder, well, I don't even clean my pans, and there was loads of black stuff at the bottom of the pan, or there was like a jelly at the bottom of the pan. I didn't know what that was, and you think, how can that person be saying, "Oh, my product's better than theirs"? Like,
yeah, absolutely.
Right. So the thing with McDonald's is it's regardless of whether you think it's a good product or not, it's always consistent. So what you're saying about the chips there and the way they manage their oils, you're always going to get the same product from them. You're never going to get any little bits on them. There's no. It's always clean, isn't it? Is what I'm trying to say. Where if you go into different shops, depending on how they're managing their oil, you're not always going to get a consistent product.
Massively agree. And especially if you're not checking anything. I like the High Lake sunflower oil, but I am more of a fan of highly saturated fats for frying. I think they're stronger. They give you a crispier product, dripping and palm. I think for me, that's what I like. And that's just, but it is a technical point and it's nothing to do with what's better or what's worse. Food that's fried in saturated fat does come out crispier. But the High Lake sunflower oil is good, and it is starting to pose a few different challenges operationally. When you start working on weaker oils, you need to have more rules. Like you say, Tom, we only like fresh oil for chips, and I think you've got to start doing things like this, because if you don't have rules, you before you know it, you're soon frying in oil that's not really fit for purpose, and you can't tell. And this is the other thing, like with some liquid oils, when you think of bad oil, you think it smells funny or it looks funny. It's got like a weird look about it. Sometimes I've been to a shop a few times, different shops, where they'll say, oh, there's a problem with the batter. So it's my job to go in and have a look. And the oil's broken down, but it still looks fresh. And that's because it's fresh because you topped it up by 30, 40%. But then by the time you leave, it's broken down because it breaks down faster. And a lot of people don't realize that especially with liquid oils, you get like there's two different ones. You get a high amount of acrolein, which is it's a compound, a chemical compound. You get a high amount of aldehydes, which is a form of formaldehyde. And basically they build up and build up and build up. And really, after a certain amount, you have to bin the oil completely and just start fresh, because liquid oil is just, and this is stuff that I've learned from talking to people that own McDonald's and stuff like that, because they've got all the science down and they know exactly what they should be looking for. And I think we, in our industry, we maybe just wing it a little bit and think, oh, no one's looking, no one cares. It's still better than what everyone else does. And one thing I was interested in, guys, is how did you both get into the industry? I know you both, but it's not something we've ever really sort of got into. And I know a little bit about you, Mine, but tell us how you sort of got into the industry, Mine.
I was brought up with it. Parents were in the trade. Well, I'm definitely fifth generation family goes. So there's my dad, granddad, great granddad, and back. Yeah, so I basically just got dragged into it.
You did take a bit of time out though, didn't you? You went to work elsewhere as
Yeah.
well, didn't you?
Yeah, I've done. So I grew up in the trade, and then we took. I was early 20s. Dad opened a restaurant, Italian restaurant. So I went to work in there for a bit, and then from there, I had an opportunity to open a bar next door to the restaurant, and that's what I went and did. So we had opened a bar / nightclub. And I did that for 6-7 years. Came back into fish and chips for a brief period of time, and then had another change. Went offshore for a few years, and then went from offshore back in to where I'm at now. As the oil price dropped, there was no money left in it. Work was starting to dry up, so I ended up finding a site. And that's where I'm at now in Billingham. Yeah, so that's just over 5 years we've been open for now.
Has your family always been like in the northeast?
They were in Whitby. That's where they started. The first shop that I know of was Royal Fisheries, which is now Fusco's. They bought that from, it'll be my granddad. They moved from Whitby over to Middlesbrough. I think the main reason they moved, I was talking to my dad about this a couple of weeks ago. One of the reasons that they moved was back in the 60s with Whitby. It won't have been as buoyant as it is now. So you're going to be busy, probably trade over the summer, a very short summer. But then for the rest of the year, there's no one there. I think they moved for an increase in trade. They moved where the people were. So that's why they ended up with Teesside, and they built up quite a decent sized business. They had quite a few shops, up to 10 shops at one point, just in our area.
I guess in the 60s, Whitby would have been quite an industrial place, fishing place.
Yeah.
So
will have been. I mean, completely different to what it is now. I mean, just that Whitby's changed in the last 15 years. It's really come into its own, Whitby, as we know it now. Yeah, 15 to 20 years, it was different place altogether. I mean, it's still always been pretty, always been a nice place to visit, but definitely the last 15 years is where it's boomed into what it is now.
And Tom, tell us about how you got into the industry, because, and also you're not originally from Cornwall, are you?
No, I'm a Leicester boy.
I see, not far from me then, really.
Yeah.
Whereabouts in Leicester?
Well, I was born in, we lived in Beaumont Leys when I was really young.
Yeah.
And then my dad worked in the probation service. So we had to move around a little bit with where, as to where he was working. So I was born in Leicester. And then when I was quite young, we moved over to Rutland, which is smallest county. They moved to a little village called Whissendine, which is just near Oakham. I only came down to Cornwall getting on 10 years ago. Unfortunately, I can't sort of brag the same sort of frying heritage as Martin, but the way that we got into it was kind of by accident, really. When I was 15 years old, I was washing pots part-time in a local hotel called the Whipper Inn. While I was kind of at secondary school at the Vale of Catmos, studying for my GCSEs. And my goal at that age was, even though I was fairly academic, I didn't really enjoy school. I didn't really enjoy education particularly, and I was keen to do something a bit more handy. And I wanted to be, so I made a decision to become a chef, kind of based on a love for food that I'd kind of got from my mum and my grandma, who were both excellent cooks. And so like I say, I went to work washing pots at the Whipper Inn Hotel, and then there was a restaurant next door called Nick's Restaurant, which had probably the best reputation in the area, apart from a hotel down the road called Hambleton Hall, which is really quite special, Michelin star. We kind of had that place had the best reputation in the area. So I decided once I'd left school that I'd apply for a job there. So I got a job there as a commie chef, working for this guy, a head chef and proprietor, a guy called Nick Healy, who was proper old school, hard ass head chef, very sort of incredibly passionate, but really quite terrifying at the same time. And he'd kind of learned his trade at the George Cinq in Paris. So he was Michelin standard. He came back over to England, set up his own restaurant. I got a job as a commie chef with him, December it was, and got Christmas out of the way and just got my ass handed to me, really. For the first 3 weeks I was there, it was absolutely dreadful. And and I remember it closed at the end of December, so everyone could have a holiday for a week or so. And I remember ringing Nick up and just saying, "Nick, it's not for me. Thanks, but no thanks. But I can't do this anymore. It's just dreadful." And he then persuaded me to stay on, at the very least until he could find a replacement. So I did. After the holiday, I went back and when I went back, I kind of changed my attitude that I was really going to dig in and work hard and try and become, make something of the opportunity. And I think he changed his attitude slightly. He kind of softened and spent a little bit more time, trying to help me. And anyway, long story short, I ended up staying there for 8 years, and worked my way up through the ranks there. And then while I was there, I met my now wife, Jenny. And we then went off to work at a place called Doddington Hall in Lincolnshire, which is a huge Elizabethan stately home. Did a few bits there, cooking for the guy who owns it. Worked for Goldman Sachs at the time, was very high up in Goldman Sachs, very, very wealthy guy, and him and his wife Claire. And they wanted to make the kind of estate that they owned more self-sufficient. So they got me and Jenny in, because by that time we'd established a fairly good reputation locally as people who were quite competent, Jenny being a front of house person and me being a back of house person. They got us in to set up a restaurant and farm shop, which was kind of more like a food hall, to try and get the estate to be more self-sufficient. And so they had, all of the money that they had to spend on maintaining the house could be then generated by the businesses that they set up on site. And that went really, really well. We did that for 5 years, but incredibly hard work. And so ultimately we decided after 5 years that as we were putting in all these hours, we were doing it really for somebody else. And it was about time we did it for ourselves. So we'd long been harbouring ambitions to come down to Cornwall because it's where I used to holiday as a kid. So we came down with the idea of buying a seafood restaurant, and that was, while we were up in Lincoln, we booked 5 or 6 viewings on different restaurants to view while we were down here, and we came down and did them all over a weekend. And anyway, this chip shop in Mevagissey came up for sale, and it was a bit of a wild card, and we never really had any intention of getting into fish and chips, but we bought it. And 10 years on, still got it now. So yeah, it wasn't quite the seafood restaurant we were going for, but actually, we've got no regrets at all. It's a big change in direction for us. Probably 20 years ago, if you'd asked me if I ever wanted to have fish and chip shops or fry fish and chips for a living, I'd have said no. Having made the leap into it, really enjoying it, I've got to say. Good, and it's putting food on the table.
If you'd asked Martin if he wanted to fry fish and chips all those years ago, probably would have said no too.
I'd have said no. Yeah, I was still saying no 5 years ago.
If he's honest, he probably thought about it this weekend.
Yeah, pretty much.
No, I don't know. Even when I was growing up, though, I always had this alternative vision. I didn't want to do it, but then I enjoyed it. I do enjoy frying. And I don't know, I think it's an enjoyable occupation if you're in control of the situation. I think when you're not in control of the situation, I think, and maybe you're short-staffed or you're in a quieter shop than you'd like to be, or whatever it is that something's against you, it can also feel like a bit of a prison sentence. So I totally understand that too. I can see both sides of that coin. Do you sort of relate to that, Martin, to some degree?
Yeah, you said that. Yeah, it's true. 20 years ago, I certainly didn't envisage myself carried on with the business, but it's just something that's in you, and it's always something you can go back to. Yeah, and it is enjoyable, like you say, when everything's right. If you've got the right site and you're doing business, it's fun. And the easiest part of it is when you're behind the pans.
Yeah,
when everything's going well, you got a busy shift. It's it's all right. It's easy.
I guess something your dad, let's say, is he retired yet or coming to retirement, Martin, your dad?
He keeps threatening it.
Oh, right, he keeps threatening it. I would imagine his biggest gripe is probably the fact that he just loves the frying. Well, obviously, and the financial aspect of it. But now, with any business, there's a lot of red tape. You've got to consider this, you've got to consider that. And I would imagine that probably detracts from him liking the industry. Whereas now, our generation, all this red tape is just normal.
So last year, when they did the first lockdown, and there was all, how are you going to get back open? we were discussing about click and collect and online ordering and things like that. Now, that side of it he's just not interested in because of the age and because it just doesn't want to introduce anything new like that.
It's pretty understandable, though. He's coming to the end of his,
Yeah,
his working life, let's say. He wants to enjoy life a bit more. So, yeah, introducing all this technology now for him would just be like, what the hell?
yeah,
yeah. I'm not being funny. Someone his age probably doesn't even want to till.
To be fair to him, for his age, he's still. We were talking last week. Still sounding him out about whether he's ever going to retire, but he's still got the passion for it. He still loves the job, and it's more the customer side of it as well. Having customers in, and it's the customer experience. That's just a big part of it.
One thing I wanted to discuss, guys, is we've all watched Seaspiracy. What were your thoughts going into it? There was a few outraged posts on Facebook and so on. I'll let you guys go first, actually, and I'll give my opinion afterwards. But Tom, what did you think of it?
Oh, I knew you'd come to me. I expected when you sort of when I told you I was going to watch it, I think I said to you I expected it to be quite a one-sided representation of the industry, and I mean it is. There are things on there that I wouldn't say exposes, because I think a lot of it we all knew about, but there are things that he's got us talking about which are quite clearly absolutely appalling. I mean, shark finning, I can't see any way anybody could stand up and defend that as a practice, and whaling and stuff like that. I mean, well, that's another issue, but certainly plastics as well. What it did is it did bring a lot of these things back into the conversation, and they're all things that we should be talking about. But like I said, it was a film about the fishing industry made by a vegan documentary maker, and I think I want to be a bit careful what I say, but certainly I think human beings as a race and as a species now are. There is nothing we can do. There is no lifestyle choice we can make that doesn't have consequences of some sort on wildlife and on our environment. And I think you could make a documentary about vegan lifestyles, which shows the consequences of crop growing. Do you know what I mean? Crop production and the number of insects that are killed, or the billions of field mice that are killed in wheat production. And it's I think it's good that documentaries like this come out and we all have this conversation, but and it brings these things to the forefront. But what I don't ever like is this kind of holier than thou attitude that you get from documentary and filmmakers like that, where it's like, stop eating seafood, that's the only solution, my lifestyle is squeaky clean, everything you're doing is dreadful, and at the end of the day there's nothing that we do as human beings anymore that doesn't have consequences of some sort. That's kind of what I got from it. And and also just quickly, I felt really, really bad for having a business down in Mevagissey and knowing a lot of fishermen who are absolutely passionate about sustainability and their environmental practices, and to produce a documentary that's so blank, has such a blanket documentary which kind of portray the entire fishing industry as being bad is incredibly unfair on the people such as them, and I'm sure many of the other big businesses as well, such as the Icelandic trawlers and the Norwegian ones, who really are making an effort to do it the best way they possibly can.
Yeah, no, just the same as Tom. It was shocking. Look at the slavery. I mean, you go down that route, it's not just the fishing problem, is it? That's the slavery issues. You can't just stick that on fishing. That's a problem with that everywhere.
Exactly, it extends to the clothing industry.
Yeah, clothing industry. Dubai's built on slavery. Wasn't great to watch.
It was built to shock, though. Like, I noticed early on, they were just constantly ramping it up, and it felt like I was watching a horror movie. Not from what I was seeing, the way that the whole thing went. It was just constantly building up your emotion.
Yeah,
And I do think that was on purpose, because if you're scared, if you're in the state of being scared, and I read about this a few years ago. So when they design big shopping malls, you want the sensation of feeling lost, because if you feel lost, you feel scared, and chances are you will spend more money because your normal emotions aren't in check. And this was the same with that film. Like, it ramped up all your emotions So when they then said 50% of all plastic waste is a fishing net, you're not going to jump on Google and think, oh, is that right? You know, and you know, and I think I knew it was going to be a vegan propaganda film the minute he was standing behind a wall at the Tokyo fish market and he was saying, oh, there's loads of dead tuna over there. And I was like, there's nothing illegal with that. Because your emotions are so ramped up. Initially, you think, wow, dead tuna. Tuna, we eat tuna. Like, you know, like, so, but yeah, I think for me, it was very similar to watching Blair Witch Project. It was like, there was all this ramping up in emotion, but nothing was actually really, truly happening. And I think if you can get the viewers in a state to be so scared or upset or whatever it is, angry, then chances are all those facts that they're throwing out, you know, just scare people even more. And no one thinks to write it down or look it up on their phone or go on Google, because almost everything they said was disputed. So, for example, when they said no fish in the sea by 2048 or whatever it was, that was, I did find the guy's name because I used it in the last podcast, but it was a professor who said that in 2006. But in 2009, the same guy came out and said, no, I was wrong. And yet no one talks about his 2009 article. They just talk about his 2006 article.
Well, the whole thing was there was so much cherry picking in there, wasn't there? I mean, you could tell that even the interviews were just edited within an inch of their lives, you know, and, you know, I'm sure I didn't listen to your last podcast, but I know you'll have guests who are far more knowledgeable and able to debunk a lot of this than possibly we can, but it certainly had that feeling of, like you say, of being cherry picked in order to give the best possible shock value, an amount of shock value to what he was trying to say, and I think you hit the nail on the head when you described it as a vegan propaganda film. That's what it is, simple as. The
people that are already halfway to being vegan will watch that, and that might confirm their opinion of the industry. Like you guys say regarding slavery, I wrote down a note here and I was like, that's a local issue that would probably affect all of those industries, that, as in not just fishing, whether it was farming in Thailand or whatever it was where that slavery was occurring. I think it was Thailand that they mentioned. So I would imagine that would affect any industry. Why make that a global issue? That should be a local issue.
Mm-hmm.
What did they say? Something like 50% of rubbish in the sea is plastic fishing nets, when actually it's 5%. And they were saying British fleets don't use plastic net. You know, they're not allowed to use it. How comes they end up in British waters? Who's dropping it off while they're here? So the Scottish fishermen, especially, all fishermen of the British Isles would, and I'm just said Scottish because I spoke to those guys, were absolutely peed off about that, because they were saying, we bring back rubbish to the shore and it's plastic, but we don't use plastic nets. So where's it from? So I do feel like it's a bit of an international problem. And yeah, did they mention some valid things? Yeah, probably they did. Can you believe it now? Because they throw it in there with all that negative stuff and the lies that it's hard to follow. It goes back to a guy on Twitter a few years ago that I follow. He's like a business consultant in the oil industry. You know, he goes all over the world. Put on Twitter tell me one business, he goes, I've got as long as you want on this, tell me one business that doesn't affect anything. Like, you know, everything has a process. So for example, if you're a farmer, you're moving soil and planting something, just one thing that you can do that doesn't affect anything. And even to this day, I can't think of one thing that doesn't affect something. It's impossible. You know, when people say, oh, we should be vegan, I see all the time, like I talk to farmers and they say like foxes get caught up when they're doing combine harvesting. You said field mice, foxes, badgers, you name it, all sorts of animals, you know. Their argument would be, we shouldn't eat animals at all, and that was just killed on the job. And yeah, that's a shame, but be careful next time. But don't eat animals, you know. But how do you feed a growing population of what's the population now? 7 billion of the UK? 8? No, sorry, of the world, sorry.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, sorry. Clearly not the UK.
No.
Yeah, be a bit tight for space, wouldn't we?
So that's how many tourists are going to be in Cornwall this summer.
Yeah, probably one of them.
Well, I think Martin's coming down.
To Cornwall.
Pay
a visit.
Yeah, I'm going to be there on Monday, actually, so a week today. Yeah, but I'm going to Port Isaac, so nice part of the world.
Lovely.
But to be fair, Mevagissey is really nice as well. Your location in Mevagissey is really nice.
Yeah, it's not too shabby, is it?
You can't park anywhere.
Well, there's an enormous car park as you come in on the left-hand side. You're best not to try and park in Mevagissey itself, because it's all very, very narrow streets designed for horse and carts, and it's great fun when we get people try and they'll just follow their sat nav, won't they? Absolutely religiously, and so they'll drive past all of the signs saying "Do not go past this sign." Not suitable for HGVs. They'll just carry on going and find themselves, sandwiched in between two buildings, which can be very entertaining for the locals, but not so good for the poor bugger in the camper van. But yeah, it's a beautiful part of the world.
So we've spoke about Seaspiracy, and off the back of that, did it make you guys think about how to be more responsible, even if you didn't truly believe what they were saying? Did it make anything go through your mind and think, all right, what could I be doing better?
As far as what we buy in, we only buy MSC and responsible fisheries logos on all our boxes. We're certainly not signed up to the MSC, and I won't. Everything we buy is supposedly sustainable, but I don't really know how far we can take it.
Out of interest, I want to press on this, not to shit stir, but because I am getting Lauren on from the MSC, I'd like to know why you won't go that extra step. Like, what is it that mentally blocks you, that you're just not happy with being an MSC member?
You're paying for a logo. It's a business. The MSC is a business, and they're just driving sales. Yeah, that's my reason.
What about you, Tom?
I think your original question about whether this has made us think any more about it, I don't think it has. I think most fish and chip shop proprietors were already conscious of this as being an issue, and I think a great majority of us, I'd like to say, were probably already committed and continue to be committed to trying to source fish, responsibly. So no, the Seaspiracy hasn't changed the way I operate, but I think, we're, as an industry, we're already doing as much as we can, and it's good. I mean, if this documentary has made us all, talk about this again, then that can only be a positive thing, and it continues to keep the pressure on, Icelandic and Norwegian vessels to continue to do the best, because they'll be under more scrutiny. It's something that was already at the forefront of our minds anyhow.
And what about to Martin's second point about MSC? Is that something you're involved with, or just sort of steer clear from? Just
out of trying to source the best fish that we can, we often end up with MSC fish anyhow. I mean, we use brim a lot, which is a product that I like. We've used Royal Greenland, Kirkella. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like certainly brim, and I think the other two are MSC approved. So I think just naturally, often if you're committed to trying to buy the best fish you can get, it often comes with MSC accreditation naturally, but it's not something that we deliberately worry too much about. Primarily, it might sound selfish, but a lot of the time it's about getting the best product you can for your customers. And we do have conversations with the reps at Tea Quality to try and get some reassurance that the vessels are responsible. But primarily, it's about getting the best fish, I think, for your customer. A conversation I've had with a customer a few times about MSC, and I'm somewhere in the middle. I've got no dog in the race. That's what I'm probably trying to say. But as a customer said to me, his biggest issue with MSC is that the more you use, the more you pay, as in per slab or per case. And in any other business, the more you use, the price comes down. And he's saying you get penalized for being busier with MSC. And it's something I have discussed with Lauren from MSC. And I know they have revised the way they do the calculations now to make it cheaper. And they're talking to a lot of people. They just say, why don't they charge the boat owner more and just let the price fall all the way down to the end user, rather than trying to charge everybody for the chain of custody? But I guess they know their business or charity better than ours, and better than what I do, shall I say. But I do always find it interesting that if there's probably at any one time, there's probably 6,000 shops in the UK using MSC certified fish, and yet only, I don't know, give or take 100 MSC members. So that sort of tells you that they've got a huge catchment area of people that could promote MSC and can't, because they don't want to be penalized for paying for it. So that's what I've always thought, and I can't wait to get Lauren back on, because she's so articulate about it all, and I do think that she's always open to change if she can, but it's not her, obviously. It goes up the chain, doesn't it? Tom, one of the things, and I know this is obviously a contentious thing, so sorry to come your way on this one, but I know Martin uses frozen at sea fish and no one seems to have an issue with that. You, on the other hand, though, you're in Cornwall, and like if you poke your head outside that window now, you can see sea. So because of that, you've got the common issue of fishermen being on your doorstep. How have you sort of
navigated this quest of trying to find the best fish that you can possibly get for your money's worth consistently all year round, and not always use frozen at sea. Does that give you any issues locally?
Yeah, well, I mean, one or two. I think it was funny because when we bought the shop, it didn't have a particularly good reputation. It was a bit rough and ready. And when me and Jenny originally looked at it, we discovered that they were using frozen fish and frozen at sea fish. And I think, like many people now, and this is what we're up against, me and Jenny just didn't understand what a good product that is. And because we were, we'd never been involved in frozen fish and we had no real knowledge of FAS at all. When I first discovered that we were buying this fish and chip shop that was using frozen fish whilst being on the harbour in Mevagissey, I was outraged. I was like, well, that's absolutely ridiculous. Why don't they just, go and wander down onto the harbour with a couple of carrier bags and make a deal with the fishermen over a handshake and you know what I mean, and wander back to the shop and I couldn't understand why they weren't using local fish. And then I bought the shop and very quickly realised there's just so many advantages to using frozen at sea. I mean, first of all, the first thing I did was actually see the fish myself. And I think at the time they were buying Gaddis. And I saw it and I thought, it just looked pristine, which surprised me to start with. And since then, once we've learned a lot more about it, I think in order to deal with the volumes that a shop like that has to deal with in the summer, whereas, we might be using 200 kilos of cod fillet in a day, in order to deal with those kind of volumes and have that consistent product all the time and be able to deliver consistency to our customers, we soon discovered that frozen at sea was the best option. And obviously to use local fish all the time, you're at the mercy of the weather, the tides, the conditions, and also getting that consistent supply would be near on impossible. And also, I mean, frozen at sea, I'm sure Martin will agree, allows you to deal with any sort of unexpected fluctuations in trade. So we can get days where we might do 30 or 40% more trade than we were expecting, and having that stock of fish which you might have out for the following day, gives you that flexibility to be able to move with each day and anything that that gets thrown at you. So yeah, I mean, I think they're the main points. That the quality surprised me and how good it is, and it still does to this day. I think it's a superb product, and I do explain that to my customers who may not understand. If we ever do get questioned about whether the fish is from 10 yards away, I try and explain to them the best way I can about the quality of the product we use and about getting that consistency. And also, I mean, in Mevagissey, we don't even catch a lot of cod. And that's what our customers want. It's a lot of what is caught down there is mackerel and sole, pollock, and other species, whiting. And we have run them as specials before. We do get local whiting and local scallops and stuff from time to time. And you're struggling to shift it. You know what I mean? You're putting it you're having to put it on a lower price point just to try and persuade people to have it, because the customers that come to our shop want cod. So I hope that sort of clears it up a little bit. But
how about you, Martin? Is that something that, have customers ever sort of asked you about, fresh, frozen, all that malarkey? Or do you think they just, if it's cooked right, they're happy with it?
The area that we're in is predominantly cod. We do put haddock on as well. Depending on supply of haddock, I'll switch between line caught, frozen at sea, usually gear vessel, which is really good. And if we're struggling for that, then I will jump onto fresh, and we use Dennis Crooks over in Whitby, buy from those, which is really good quality as well. When you switch between the two, you can see a difference. Both equally good products. But as far as customers go, certainly when we first opened, because we are fairly close to Whitby, you do get a lot of people just presume that that's where your fish comes from. It's caught and landed, but as we know that it doesn't work like that. So I do think that people just still presume your fish is just caught fresh, landed fresh, and delivered.
They probably think like the old, and this is what they did allude to in Seaspiracy. They probably do think that it is just like a fisherman out with a fishing pole, then you get back to the local market, and then you go buy the fish. But it's just not the case, is it?
No,
it's not. It's amazing how much red tape there is to actually go. That you have to go through in order to get local fish. We've had spot inspections from the MMO, the Marine Management Organisation, who have come fully uniformed into our shop and demanded to know, all of the different species we're selling. Where are they from? Is it? Have you got any of this? Have you paid cash for any of this off of a local fisherman? Has anybody brought this into you? Where's it? Do you know what I mean? And you've got to have all of this. Traceability now is obviously so important, and I guess you've got all of those bases covered by buying the FAS fish. You've got all your temperature controls have all been monitored, and all of that side of it, and the compliance is all taken care of for you. And then obviously it's up down to you once you've got it, what you do with it. Like I said, the hoops you have to go through. There is a very common misconception that we could just wander down to the harbour, do a deal with a fisherman, and then drag the boxes up to our shop and use it. Because you just can't. It's just not the way it works.
So I guess that MMO organisation is down there predominantly to stop what they call sort of black fishing, backhanders and stuff like that, non-quota fish, I guess.
I'd imagine that's their primary role. Yeah.
I guess someone like Martin would never come across those, and I know I didn't in the Midlands all those years, because I don't think anyone ever said to me, "Where'd you get your fish from?" all those years ago.
No, I think that there seems to be a lot more emphasis on that sort of thing now, isn't there? So, but it's a shame, because I mean, I'd much rather the fishermen, if they were, catching stuff over and above their quota, it'd be much better if they could haul it onto shore and sell it to local fish and chip shops and restaurants and pubs and people to actually eat, rather than chucking it back overboard. But that's a separate conversation, isn't it?
You're both fairly young, and with it, you both do a great product. Do you think, and this is probably like a multifaceted question, or more of a topic more than anything, do you think our industry still gets irrationally upset about customer reviews? I know the customer isn't always right, but they can't always be wrong. When it comes to complaint, is our industry behind the curve, generally okay? Do you think we should be worried every time a customer goes online to say something?
The online reviews, they're a bit more dramatic, aren't they? And you feel it with Facebook and TripAdvisor. When you get a negative, you think, or I certainly do initially, that everybody in the whole world's going to read it, and suddenly everyone's going to be against you. The reality is, it's such a small percentage of people will actually see it. And then there's an even smaller percentage of those people that see it that'll agree with it. I tend to take the online reviews, even the good or bad. It's nice to get good ones. If you do get a negative, I tend not to respond or worry about them anymore. If you get a direct response, either by phone call or a direct message, then definitely deal with it, because it's more personal. People are taking the effort to get in touch with you, so there must be a problem. So we definitely deal with those, the online ones, not that fussed about.
What about you, Tom, in that respect?
I don't think you can help but take them to heart when you do get one online. But I think, I've spoken to you about this before. I think what's frustrating for guys like me and Martin is that 99% of the issues that people go home and write about online are things that they could have resolved, like Martin said, with a simple phone call, or just come back to the shop. I mean, we had a review a couple of weeks ago on Google, which is still up there, you'll be able to find it, for Archies, which said 1 star or something. Chip's nice, but by the time I got them home, only 1 minute away, they weren't hot. And I thought, well, if you're only 1 minute away, then bring them back, you dickhead. Do you know what I mean? It's like, and we would have just given you a fresh portion. Why go home, sulk about it, give us a 1-star review online, which potentially damages our business, when by your own admission you are 60 seconds from our front door? Bring them back, and we'll give you a hot portion. Because I think what customers a lot of the time don't understand is that all that we want is to make them happy. Because if they're happy, we've got a good business. Do you know what I mean? It means that we've got people coming back and enjoying our product, and that's exactly what we want. And sometimes the reviews are written in such a way that they're assuming that you've deliberately set out to do them some massive injustice, by forgetting to give them their pickled onion or something. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, no, it's just, we're human beings. Do you know what I mean? Mistakes happen, and give us a ring and we'll rectify it. Just don't, fucking keyboard warriors. I think they do everybody's head in, to be honest.
I used to dread frying, and then someone would come in, they've just had food, and they've come back 15 minutes later. Now they're standing in the front of the shop and they look miserable. So chances are, they're about to complain. So you run back up to them and you're like, and it's always when you got a queue in the shop as well. They'd never come when you're quiet, because why would they? And I remember those days and how anxious I used to feel when you're then dealing with that complaint and everyone in the shop is just staring at you.
Yeah.
And I'm now wondering if I missed those days because there was a sense of honesty about it when they used to come back and actually be genuinely disappointed,
Yeah.
you know. And now it's like you say, 60 seconds down the road, they couldn't even be bothered. And I know it's not all of your customers, but that one person could not be bothered to come back and say, oh, Tom, my chips are a bit, can I just have some fresh ones and I'll be back home because they're only 60 seconds away. I don't know. Like I've said for some time now that whether it's the NFFF or someone, whoever, they should probably do a course in some sort of online customer service training. By all our own admission, we're not professionals in this. And I think I do all right because, hey, I just like you guys, I get people go on the Facebook groups to sort of say, not happy with my batter. So I then spring into action and I think to myself, well, all over my bags, all over my packaging, everywhere, Facebook page, my phone number is everywhere. And yet some people want to go on the groups and voice it out there first. So it's the same thing for me too. It is, I always say like, for me, I just assume that rather than being afraid that everyone's going to see it or worry about that, I just assume that everyone's going to see it. So the way I deal with it is just assume that everyone is going to see it, even my response. And I think,
yeah.
And I think because we live in a world now where everything's open and shared, and it's so weird that people take to open forums to sort of find out or complain, first before going back to the source and saying, oh, is there a problem? I did come in earlier and I don't know, I didn't get a pickled onion or I didn't get my fish and chips or whatever it may be. Or the batter wasn't as good as I usually find it is or whatever, whoever it is they're complaining to. But it just feels like as a nation, everyone's quick to go to the public forum. And I think if you put that in old fashioned ways, like it's almost like going to the local bakers, buying a sausage roll, and instead of going back to the local bakers to complain, you stand in the market square shouting that your sausage roll was a bit crap.
Oh yay! Oh yay!
Oh yay! Oh yay! Yeah, and it's don't go there and have a sausage roll. It's well crap. Or just go back to the shop and tell them that the sausage roll was crap. But if there was like an online course that someone could put together, and I'm sure it exists, but I mean one that's relatable, and doesn't cost like an arm and a leg, I just think it could work out nicely because I know some people that respond to all reviews and I know others that never respond to any, and I do wonder which is right.
Yeah,
we tend to respond to bad ones. I try and respond to a lot of our good ones, but on the odd occasion we get a bad one. So we're on TripAdvisor and Google and Facebook and everything, and I always try and respond professionally. You never write really what you want to write because it would be a disaster. Always try and remain professional and try and put it right. You know what I mean? If they're genuinely not happy, we'll do whatever we can to put it right. And I don't know if there is really a need for. I don't know if there's a need for a course really in that regard. But it is funny. I mean, you do see, don't you, on the forums the different ways that people deal with complaints vary wildly. We do a lot of ass kissing if we get a complaint and try and win them round. Whereas there seems to be some people on those pages who is if you dare complain, it's a massive middle finger and fuck off and don't come back type attitude.
I might be wrong here, but I think I probably fall in the. I've probably come through like Martin. My dad was in the industry before, and my dad always used to have this policy that if it was a genuine complaint, and you can see fairly quickly if it's genuine, you'd refund them the food and give them a free meal as well. Yeah. And a lot of people would say, "Whoa, that cost you too much." Well, if it's a genuine review, you've now converted that customer from a complainer to a long-time customer. And my dad just said, for what it costs us, let's turn that customer with a good experience into a lifelong customer.
Yeah, definitely. If they're coming back direct to you, they're giving you a chance to put it right, and you can send them into a champion for you. Depending on how you handle it, there'll be a voice for you. You just turn a negative into a positive. But there is a few online reviews that you think, are you talking about? Are you sure this is the same shop that you've been to? Because some of them the processes that you work through and the things you do. It's just, maybe it's possible, but it's very unlikely.
I feel like those people that do the online review, I always feel like they're building a sandwich. And this might sound silly, but like, this is my analogy. Like, instead of just saying I came in earlier and the wait was long, Well, that's not enough, is it, to the everyone that's reading it? So now I'm going to say I came in, the wait was terribly long, the woman that served me was absolutely miserable, the guy behind the range didn't even nod at me.
They're justifying their own complaints themselves, aren't they?
Yeah, I agree totally.
But I do find that those people just want to be listened to. So if they actually came in, instead of doing this whole thing online, they probably would have just got what they wanted, which was to be listened to and a free meal and a refund. And maybe their initial complaint would have been valid. Moving forward, talking about courses and so on, did you guys ever have the normal quality award? As in, when I say normal, the one before this new one? No. And can I ask you both why? Like, not like I'm doing any market research for the NFFF or anything. Just out of interest.
I looked at it a couple of times to do, and it was something I meant to do, but just never pushed the button on it, to finalise it. But it was always on my mind to do it. Just never got around to it.
So without trying to put words in your mouth, though, Martin, although you wanted to do it, it was probably like a 5 out of 10. You never overly felt compelled to get it done. There was nothing that bent your arm to get it done then.
No. The reason to do it was would have been for a bit more publicity, maybe a bit more of a marketing tool. If I was to go from one shop to two to three, maybe I would look at it again, because it might help to put things in place. Having managed shops, for putting more processes in place, might help with that. If you've got an award, it's like an award scheme, your staff it gives them something to work towards, a bit more so than if it's just your own procedures, which obviously we all have, that you're working towards. If there's an award behind it, it might, for them to stick to it more, maybe. So that would be my thought process for doing it.
And what about you, Tom? You didn't do it either. And what was the reason behind that?
No reason. There's no reason I didn't do it at all. But I don't feel inclined to be honest. I've got nothing further to add to it, really. Fair play to people who do it, and it's probably not for everyone.
What about the new one? Do you ever see yourself doing that? It's a bit cheaper. It's remotely only. Is that something you'd be interested in, or do you both pretty much feel the same way as you did before about it, if that's the case?
I have just literally zero opinion on the quality awards whatsoever. If you're looking for an interesting answer,
no. It's more it's more just trying to delve into the reason why more than anything. But honestly, it's not a big deal at all, really.
So I wouldn't know how is the remote going to work. I don't know. I'd have to look into it to see whether it's worthwhile doing, or the process is the same. I don't know.
I don't know either, to be honest. And again, this isn't, anybody from the NFFF will probably listen to this and think that I'm trying to bait you to say something negative. It's not. It's just that we're in the industry, and you'd be remiss to not talk about it. We've spoken about lots of other things. So I just think that it's interesting to get opinions out there and shine some light on them, because then people can act on them. What are your thoughts on the Fish and Chip Awards? Again, similar sort of thought logic. Did you ever enter? And if it comes back, I'm sure it will you ever enter?
I looked to enter, went through the application. It's about 3 years ago. I didn't end up doing it. I didn't push the button on it, to be honest. I felt like you had to jump through too many hoops to get involved. One of the negatives that I found was that if you to be awarded, to get into the top 60, you didn't actually get a visit to your shop. That is right, isn't it? Is that right?
Top 60 is no visit, yeah.
And that one thing that put me off was how can you have a top 60 when you don't even know how good your product is? So it made a bit of a farce for me. Obviously, past the top 60, where you get the 20 below, you can totally justify that those shops in that top 20 have obviously deserved to be in that top 20 because they've had a visit and they've been judged accordingly. But for the top 60, I don't see how you can have a competition there. They actually haven't been and seen your shop or seen your product.
I guess in some ways their argument is, well, this is why the complicated paperwork is there, so that they can weed it out. But then that also lends to the fact that it's more complicated.
If you got it, you can sell yourself on paper, can't you? Anyone can lie on paper. Anyone anyone can tell a story.
One of the things I always said was a few years ago, let's say, is that if the only way to enter or get automatically entered was if you did the quality award, then it would motivate people to do the quality award. And then if you did the quality award, you then could go through to the main award, providing you hit the criteria because you had a visit. But I sort of inclined to say that anyone is entering, then they deserve a visit, in my view. That's just, I think it's common sense. And I think I can understand their financial obligations or complications that also aid to that too. Tom, what are your thoughts on this?
It's never really come on my radar, to be honest. I've spoken to the staff briefly about it before and kind of we've got like a staff group chat and done a bit of, when I joined up with the NFFF, a few months ago, I kind of said, well, if you fancy it, we can enter the awards now. And the consensus was, well, why? Do you know what I mean? It's like, because we get judged by our customers all the time. Do you know what I mean? And we get judged by how, we measure our success on whether our customers are happy, whether our customers are coming back, what our footfall's like, and how we're perceived in the local area, because that is what is important to our business. And, I'm not in this for my ego or as a vanity project. I'm in this because I enjoy the industry. I enjoy the catering industry. I enjoy the fish and chip industry. Enjoy making our customers happy, and I'm trying to run a successful business. And if all of those things come together, and my staff are happy, and my customers are happy, and I'm making enough money to live, that's what's important to me. Really, not really. An external body from somewhere else coming and giving me kind of reassurance that I'm doing things right, or in their view doing it wrong. It just doesn't appeal to me, and so that's how I feel about it. But fair play to people who do enter. I think it must be a good way of motivating staff, and it must make strive to keep your product absolutely as good as it could possibly be. But I feel like we do that all the time anyhow.
It's like you're in competition with yourself each day, isn't it, Tom?
Absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree.
Every fish that you take out of the pan, you want it to be as good or better than the last one you took out.
Yeah, no, absolutely agree. And that's why we've been working with Stell to get the flour. We loved his batter mix before we were on the natural one, but there was something, there are ways that I felt for our taste and for our shop, there are ways that it could be improved for us. Do you know what I mean? And so we worked with Stell to get a batter that we felt suited our needs and suited our customers. And like you say, you're always putting yourself under the pressure to maintain the standards and improve the standards and keep your staff motivated and keep the product good. And so I don't need some.
You two, though, I feel like just listening to this little bit is like, and I was just thinking about, this was my response before you went into what you just said, but you both quite highly motivated to do better yourselves. Like, you both text me, obviously again separately, but only a couple of weeks ago, Martin, you were texting me and saying, oh, what about this? What about that? What if I did the batter like this? And I think you don't need someone from outside to say to you, that's wrong, or maybe do this, or maybe do that. You two are quite highly motivated on your own in that respect anyway.
Yeah.
So I could see why you don't rely on outside external forces to say, oh, maybe you should consider this. You guys go looking for it if you feel like there's a problem anyway.
Yeah, I think even if you maybe don't even see that you're not looking for problems, but you're just looking for improvements.
Yeah.
You can always improve as well. There's always something to learn, isn't there? You can always keep improving, even if it's just that 1%. If it's just 1% each time, it doesn't have to be massive. Probably for the improvements that we feel that we need to make, the customers probably don't even notice them. The customer probably doesn't even think that you need to improve. If you look back over the last few years of you working, Tom, where you have been making little improvements to your business. If you look back to a few years ago, your product might be completely different then to what it is now, but you've only changed it a little bit at a time. But from then to now, it's probably massive. I mean, I feel that way with me. I mean, go back to when I opened the shop 5 years ago. I felt that I knew what I was doing, but my product then to now is way better than what it was. But that's because I wanted to keep keep improving and keep learning.
No, I think I agree entirely. I think, and I think another point, I don't know if you agree with this, but it kind of works on the reverse as well, that there could be, I could have a whole service where I think I can't, for example, I might have a whole service where I don't feel like I've got the batter quite right, and it ruins my whole night. Do you know what I mean? And I'm thinking all these customers are going to be taking this home thinking, oh, that batter was shit. Do you know what I mean? And in fact, we're, like you say, we're our biggest critics. The customers, 99% of the time, aren't going to notice the things that we're noticing when it comes to when we think things aren't quite right. But it ruins our entire evening. But to them, it's funny because on nights like that, the nights you tend to pick up 3 or 4 5-star reviews, and you think, you know what I mean? We've got away with one there, but. You have got to hold yourself and your staff to that kind of standard.
See, when we develop batters, I think I've told one of you or both of you this before, but everyone can hear it. So when we develop batters, I remember I was at one shop and we've cooked it. It's crisp, it's nice. We leave it 5 minutes, test it. We've got one that we're trying straight away. And we get a knife and we peel under the fish, we pick away the batter and we're like tasting it. And I looked at him, the guy once, I said, you know what, we've got this wrong. He goes, why? I says, because tell me what customer does anything like this. I said, look over there, because the restaurant was open. I said, look over there. They've just got the salt and vinegar. They've not even tried the product, because I do this too. Salt and vinegar all over it. You've got your peas, you've got your curry, you've got your tartar sauce, and everything just becomes this everything goes swamp. Swamp. And I've often said many times, we're doing this wrong. Like, yes, we should go to, we should try, see if it's crispy at least, but we can see it, we can taste it, but we're not trying it how customers do. And not being funny, for the most part, when customers get home, that is what's happening. Yeah, it is, it is becoming, they make it their own.
I don't know about you, Martin, but it drives me insane when I see my fryers using the batter tin when it's like only got an eighth of the batter left with this kind of residue at the bottom, and you see them putting a fish in. It's like, no, you've got to have it, and because even minute details like that, like the depth of the batter in your tin, I'm convinced makes a huge difference to the.
Yeah, you don't know why. You wouldn't think that it would, but it does, doesn't it?
It definitely does. Yeah, definitely does.
I truly believe it's because it's the end of the batter, so it's the flattest batter you've got, really, and you need the depth to dip into as opposed to paste onto, because that's what you're doing. You're literally scraping it around like a sponge, know. But for me, I see this all the time. Like, I went to a shop not long ago, although God knows what long is now with this whole thing, but. It was like 2:00. The batter had been out for about 4 hours. And batter obviously separates, as you know. You leave it to one side, you get water on the top. And it had been out, and they just literally got their hands in there, mixed it around, and then put whatever it was that they were frying in it. And the problem is, once you get that water separation, the batter's crap because the raisin agents have dissipated. So you've just, and then they're like, oh, this happens all the time. The batter's no good. I'm like, oh my God, no. It's nothing to do with the batter. It's the fact that, and again, because batter has a lot of enemies, time is one of them. The longer the batter sits out, it just starts to split out. One thing I wanted to ask you both, how do you keep learning? How do you keep pushing yourselves to keep learning? And also, what is one of the biggest struggles that you have, in business?
One of the biggest struggles for me, just working for yourself, when there's just one of you. I mean, this is why I message you so much, in a way, is because you for me, it's a bit of reassurance, and because we don't know everything, and you might think that you're doing everything right, but it's nice to bat ideas off other people. So I struggle with that a little bit. As far as the learning goes, I think you've just got to accept that you should be trying, as long as you're trying to improve, no matter what it is. And then that should keep you on the right track. As soon as you think you've got everything right, you should probably just pack up and try something else, because the chances are you haven't got everything right. If you think you're perfect, you should always want to be improving and learning. And it's just that a lot of your little things on your website still with. Even if it's just how to do your mushy peas, your tartar sauces, things like that. They're good for people just to read up on, just to give you a fresh viewpoint.
I could echo a lot of what Martin said, and I agree with him entirely. And I think the other thing I would probably add to that is we've been incredibly lucky that over the years we've established a kind of core team of staff who are incredibly loyal, and we've become almost like a family. And and I think a lot of the learning actually comes from listening to each other. And we, after a service, a busy service, it might have gone well, it might have gone badly. We make sure that once we've cleaned down, we open a cold can of beer, and we talk about the service. And we tend to go over what went well, what didn't go well, what we could improve, and actually we're bouncing ideas off each, a bit like what you were saying, Stel, talking to people like us. We use each other to bounce ideas the whole time and say, well, we fucked this up. Why did we? How can we make sure that doesn't happen in the future? And by having that relationship with your staff, and not being as an employer, you can't be closed-minded and think that you're the be all and end all, and everybody has to just follow and do exactly what you say. It's got to be a team and a team effort and a democracy, and we all learn off each other and bounce off each other, and they've all got so much to contribute in terms of planning and ideas and learning. So
it's important. You're right, Tommy. You've got to involve your staff, because with what we do, you can't do it on your own.
No,
can you? You can't do it on your own. You need to involve people. You can't open them doors just you.
Exactly, and I think it makes your staff feel, if it makes them feel empowered and valued. If you actually take the time to listen to them and bring them into your circle, it stands for a huge amount. And we've got staff who we've had for 8 or 9 years who've stood by our side through thick and thin and everything. Do you know what I mean? And they and I think that's because we're not rich enough to be able to pay them enormous salaries, but what we do is respect them and make sure they feel an actual part of it. So we're all pulling in the same direction. Do you know what I mean? We're all in it together. It's like this sort of like grim kind of band of brothers type, going into battle on a Friday night. And but I think that's really, really important. I think that's an important thing to add to what you said.
I think there's a lot to be said for respect and having respect for your staff and each other and getting their respect back. One thing I wanted to touch on before we finish is, it's a couple of things. Last bits is, what are your business goals? What is it you want over the next 5 years? I know, Martin, you've discussed some bits and bobs with me in the past. If you want to talk about it here, if you want, but is there something you want? Do you want like a chain of shops? Do you want to stay as you are? Do you want to wind down a bit, wind up a bit? What are your goals?
For me, as you know, it's a battle between staying as I am with one and branching out, increasing my units. But that battle's because I was brought up in a business where my dad operated a lot of units, and I saw the challenges. Ask yourself what it's worth. Is it worthwhile? So I suppose that boils down to the sacrifice that you want to make, because there's a sacrifice in everything, isn't there? You got it, whether it's worth it. So that's the ongoing battle that I have, whether I can be just happy maintaining my one shop and just keep improving that year on year, or that I feel I need the challenge to branch out. But I'm still battling with that decision that have to be made at some point. But I'm quite happy as I am. I can still see growth where I am. We're still growing year on year after 5 years in. I mean, this year's, for me, for the type of shop I've got and where it is, I've been one of the lucky ones throughout this year's problems that we have grown. We've got to try, and my challenge now is to try and maintain that growth when everything opens up. That'll be my battle.
I don't know, really. Getting back to the core staff thing, it's actually quite relevant, because we kind of, as we find new staff and we get them trained up to a certain level, I think that then presents an opportunity to be able to think about getting another shop, because you've then got people who are kind of ready-made to move on and run that shop for you. And that's very much how when we bought Archies, we were in a position to do it, because we had a team of core staff down in our Mevagissey shop who had, come in never having fried a bit of fish in their lives to then having the experience where they'd fried hundreds of thousands of pieces of fish. And then they were ready to then, when we bought Archies, we moved a couple of our key staff from Mevagissey into that shop. They run it really, really quite well. And we start the process again down in Mevagissey. Do you see what I mean? Bringing in fresh people, working incredibly hard with them. I think once we if we get into that situation where we keep finding good people and being able to develop them, I'm keen to get more units, because I know that they're going to be in the hands of people who I can trust, people who are going to buy into our ethos. And I think that's the hardest thing. I think when you end up with all of these shops that you've got no control over, I couldn't think of anything worse. It must be absolutely dreadful when you haven't got people in there who really give a shit about what it is you're trying to do. I think I would lose sleep over it. So certainly we're looking to expand, but slow and steady is definitely the key, I think.
It's interesting because you're both sort of doing the same thing, and it's almost like you just start from different points. So with Martin, it's sort of like if the property came up, you'd look at it. Whereas with Tom, it's like, well, if I've got the staff, then I'll look for a property. So it's almost like chicken and egg, which is right. And does that intrigue you a bit more now, Martin, hearing Tom sort of say that he went about it that way around?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely think Tom's doing it the right way as well. You need the staff, and if you train them up yourself, I think it's a good way. What Tom's just said there, that if you're taking staff on with you, Tom, they've seen that you've opened another shop and you've taken staff from one site to manage the next site. If you're taking new staff on, they'll be able to see that there's going to be growth for them in the business.
It's definitely an incentive. Yeah,
there's actually career opportunities. Yeah, can see how it would be definitely a good thing for you.
The one downside of it is that you do get into a position where we're certainly found ourselves in a position where you're kind of overextending yourself slightly on staff, on wage, on your wage ratios and stuff, because you might have slightly more people in than you need when you're in that transition. Like at the moment, Jenny and I are at that point where we would quite like, if a suitable unit came up, we'd quite like to take on another. So as it happens at the moment, we're kind of overextending ourselves slightly with the number of staff we have on board, because we've always got that in mind as something that we might. So we've got a ready-made, so then we've got the staff ready-made and ready-trained to move on, and we could still keep everything functioning. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah. So you're probably carrying more than you should be at the moment, but it's only because you're just ready to move.
Yeah.
Well, guys, on that note, it's been great. We've took up plenty of your time on a bank holiday Monday, and I'm conscious because I know you both want to get back to your kids.
We do.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for today.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Tom. Cheers, Tom.
Cheers, Martin.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Ceres podcast. This was brought to you by Ceres Pure Food Innovation and your host, the founder and managing director, Stelios. This episode wouldn't have been possible without our episode supporters, Amity Fish Company. Scampi is often overlooked. Why not wow and delight your guest today by ordering from Amity Fish Company? Jimmy's hands-on approach ensures nothing slips under the net. Amity's dedicated team are focused on the values of quality, sustainability, traceability and provenance, ensuring only the best Scottish catch will reach your home or business. Support us by supporting our sponsors. And whilst you're in the supporting mood, why not leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts? It helps others find us.